What are the most important things in an architectural visualization? Content or form? What it represents or how it is being represented? Today, we don't understand this difference between visualizing architecture and hitting a render button on a computer. This is why we think it is important to point out things to keep in mind when making architectural visualizations. Story is king. If your image or images don't tell a story, it may be just a render or a shallow image. Tell a story. It may not be directly with the building you're showing, but the activity that it holds or the context that it is in. It can be a very easy to read story. Like for example, a girl in the red dress looking at her parents, or a lot of people watching a concert. Or it can be a story read in between the lines, a story that is being told by the weather or by very minuscule details. If your image tells a good story, there's a high chance of it being a good image. One of the best representations of this is Mir's The Early Bird. A mundane activity like the garbage man coming to pick up the trash in an early setting morning day is represented in such a way that we can all relate to the story. We can even hear the sound of the truck as it is moving and the garbage guy is throwing the bags onto the back. Obviously, this image is also an excellent representation of other skills, but the dominant one is for sure the story. I once heard someone say, if story is king, then composition is queen. Without a great composition, our story will fall apart, or it will be told in the wrong order. The term composition means putting together. It can apply to any form of art, from music to writing to photography, and yes, visualization. There are different types of composition and different rules. We can talk on principles like symmetry, hierarchy, rhythm, repetition, transformation, axis, among others. We're talking topics like form, scale, space, organization, proportion, etc. Many of the things you compose architecture itself with can sometimes be applied to portraying that architecture. Look at all these images. Although they are from different projects, they all have the same principle of composition: symmetry. It is their symmetrical disposition what orders the image and gives it the depth and interest that it holds. Like Vitruvius said in the 10 Books of Architecture, symmetry is a proper agreement between the members of the work itself and relation between the different parts in the whole general scheme, in accordance with a certain part selected as a standard. What that all means is that you don't have to have an exact mirror of the other half of the image for it to be symmetrical. It can be more of a composed balance symmetry. If I have a square on one side, I can have a circle on the other. If I have something in the foreground in one side, I can have something in the background in the other. It just has to be a balance. To know the difference between a good image and a bad image, you must know what a good image is. This is only achieved by studying and knowing everything about architectural visualizations. Of course, architectural representations don't come from modern culture. They go way back, and that implies studying painting. For example, Lutzigann's visualizations would not be the same with works of Rembrandt or Constable. References are everywhere. You can get them from a movie still, a painting, a piece of music, your own landscape. A correct palette of colors can be crucial to represent a good image. Of course, this starts from the architect's decision on what the facade material is going to be, but it ends in you deciding the color of the shirt of the person you are putting in the foreground of the image. Color also has to be studied a ton, but in the meanwhile, you can go to different websites to get a set of colors and start your image from there. Color and mood are almost two identical twin brothers. Almost. The colors inside on the moon of the image and vice versa. It's best if you decide beforehand what day of the year it is and what is going on in the image. This will help you a lot to get the right mood. This is extremely important. You have to know the client and the market your images are going to. It is very different to make an image for a competition than for a private residential complex. Of course, we all have styles of representation, and if your client wants you, it is because he is looking for that style. But if you're in that general area where you can do many types of images, then you should know what style the image is going to have. It can be a realistic image or a collage-like image, a hand drawing. These are all suited for specific clients. Information. This is crucial. Your image has to have information. It has to be a tool for whoever is reading it. It can be another architect or a family that is about to buy a house, or the guys at the construction site. If your image lacks information, then it is no good. This means having every minimum detail solved. It has to have a proportional amount of information according to the final size of the image or where it is going to be viewed. If it is going to be printed in a very huge place, then you should have a very detailed model. But obviously, if your image is going to be almost a thumbnail, well, don't waste so much of your time. Although a good technique is very important, it is not the key to a good architectural visualization. You mastering V-Ray is not going to get you cool images. It is just going to get you, in the best of cases, an accurate render. But a render is not an architectural visualization. There's more to it than hitting a render button. If you get all the tips before a technique right, a good technique could express a bit better the idea, but don't rely on it. It is not the base. Finally, break the rules. Like everything in life, don't be so strict with this. Let intuition and gut get to you and just follow your own process. Yes, some people have got it figured out and could help you with that, but don't stick only to that. So subscribe and share this with all your friends. Let's just show the world better.